गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन एंड नमस्ते सबको जो आज हमें सुन रहे हैं. We are restarting the Gender Talk webinar series of Plan by Plan India. And this is a platform, Gender Talks is a platform through which Plan India, along with other stakeholders, including girls, will attempt to actively examine, challenge, and explore innovative solutions to address the underlying causes of gender inequality, which are rooted in inequitable social structures. So the topic of our day today will be unlocking barriers to economic development by investing in education of girls. So this is something, investing in girls' education transforms communities, countries, and the entire world. Girls who receive an education are less likely to marry young and more likely to lead healthy, productive lives. They earn higher incomes, they participate in decisions that most affect them, and they build better futures for themselves and their families. So, however, in India, the rate of female labor force participation rate is really low. Only less than 1 in 3 females is actively participating in the labor force. One of the major reasons for this is lack of secondary education or completion of secondary education. Today, we have two speakers with us through whom we will examine these things on, why is it important for girls to complete their secondary education? What are some of the barriers that girls face in completing their secondary educations? What are some of the solutions at the national level, at the international level, to help girls complete their education and ensure that they stay in school? So we have with us Dr. Manjula Shroff and Ritu Malhotra. Dr. Manjula Shroff is a CEO and MD in the Calorex Group. She has been instrumental in founding and managing several premier schools. Calorex, since its inception in 1995, is a name synonymous with professionalism and excellence in schooling. It has under its umbrella the Delhi Public Schools, Calorex Olive International School at Ahmedabad, and Calorex Public Schools across the western belt of India with 40 plus educational institutions. Calorex is also recognized as a quality conscious group with a focus on innovation and the use of technology in learning. Her concern for the marginalized and those with special learning needs is also evident through the projects Visamu Kids and Prerna, a school for dyslexics. She is a recipient of several awards, among them the prestigious Secular India Award from the President of India, Sri Shankar Dayal Sharma, and Woman of the Year by American Bibliography Society, North Carolina. Welcome, Dr. Shroff, a very, very warm welcome, and we are really glad to have you here. And we look forward to an interactive session with you. Our second speaker for the day is Ritu Malhotra. She is popularly known as the SDG Educator of India, and she's a founder of ARC, an educational social startup providing print and digital solutions for integrating the UN SDGs, climate education, and global citizenship in school curriculum. Ritu is a climate activist and is the recipient of the prestigious Sarojini Naidu Award for Women. She is an eloquent speaker and is invited to various countries to share her views on the impact of education on sustainable development on the future of our planet. She was a fellow at the International Sustainability Academy, Hamburg, Germany, where she explored multiple ways to tackle climate change. An educator at heart, Ritu is passionate about educating the youth. She has received her education at Lady Shri Ram Delhi University and in NYU, New York. She has worked at Oxford University Press, Darling Kinsey Heritage Experiential Learning School, National Skill Development and Corporation, and Step by Step School, Noida. A very, very warm welcome to you too, Ritu. And I look forward to chatting with you and Manjula and explore some of the solutions to, girls not completing their secondary school education. So let's begin the discussion. So it is said, that according to the latest, if you look at the latest Unified District Information Report, we see that majority of, the dropout rate at the secondary level has declined from almost 15%, it has reduced to 13%. Yet it still remains high for, girls, and it is still high compared to the dropout at the primary and elementary school levels. So what, according to you, Manjula and Ritu, are some of the barriers, due to which the girls are unable to complete their schooling and there is this high dropout at the secondary level?
Hi everybody on this webinar. Thank you, Anushri. Such a pleasure to be here. I've been an educationist and an educator and an entrepreneur for several years. So, some of these concerns related to girl child education has always cropped up because at the end of the day, it is the woman who builds the society, a family unit and then the societal unit, right? So the more we educate children, it's not just it will not only bring about economic independence, which is very, very critical, but it will also bring about a safer, healthier society in general. So there are more than one reasons to actually have discussions like this. As rightly said, the numbers of dropouts have definitely improved over the past couple of years, whether it is primary level or secondary level. Even the primary is improved from some 57 million to 32, but a lot still needs to be done. And every time we try and look at the reasons, the number one reason, as we all know, is still poverty, right? And I'm primarily talking from the patriarchal angle because a lot of states in India are still patriarchal, barring Kerala, which is matriarchal. So literacy rates there for women are slightly better than the rest of India, but let's talk about the average. See, poverty is still a very, very big reason, right? And this is the statistics given by the World Bank that the major reason is poverty. People, if they have to take a choice for secondary schooling, and it's very, very low cost, and we'll go through, there are so many, schemes that is almost free. But if there is a sense of priority that the family has to give, then the priority goes to the boy, to the male child to go to secondary school and not the girl child. Second reason, I think, is early marriage. I think that a lot of, around the ages of 16, 18, there's a lot of early marriage still happening, mostly in the hilly and rural India. That's another one. And then, of course, subsequent, it leads to early motherhood and then, blood loss, etc. Let's not go in there for now. The third one that you see a big dip is when the girls, become adolescent and get into the menstrual period. That's where you see a big dip because, one is hygiene, one is sanitation. And although India has worked its way towards access, so more and more schools are available, I think the sanitation, or portability of drinking water, all of us have been working towards that. In the menstruation today is still stigmatized. Menstruation is still an area that is not a coffee table discussion. There are areas where children are still ostracized. You put into a hut and kept for the next 3 days until your menstruation cycle is over. So these are the kind of social barriers, really. Then another one is linked to employability, right? The girl child, if it is the oldest girl child, is almost like a second mother. While the parents are going out to do labor work or agriculture work, it is the oldest girl that's taking care of the siblings. So she's the first one to be, sacrificed for education because she's looking after the home when the parents are out earning. So domestic work is one big reason why girls are not able to complete their schooling. And then security safety, right? Gender-based violence. I mean, when, if children have to walk miles to reach schools, then a lot of violence can happen, lot of insecurity, lot of safety issues can happen while, they're en route to school. So these are very, very societal based, very generic problems, and the society and the policies are working towards them. Like you already said, like the statistics are showing, numbers are improving, but a lot more needs to be done.
Thank you. I think you raised some very valid points there. And, I'll hand over to you, Ritu, to add on to the barriers, because it is obvious that, when the dropouts are so high, dropout rates are higher in the secondary and higher secondary level. Obviously, there are barriers that girls face in accessing secondary and higher secondary school education. So do you want to add on to that, Ritu? What, according to your work experience, are some of the barriers that, girls face?
Thank you, Anishri, and thank you, Manjula ji, for sharing your thoughts. I would like to build upon what Manjula ji has just shared. She has raised very important points. And of course, I would like to start with what she said. When you educate a man, you educate an individual. And when you educate a woman, you educate a generation, a nation, a society. So we all understand the importance of educating women. And there's still plenty of work left to be done towards that. A lot of effort, a lot of positive effort is going towards it. But of course, more work needs to be done to make it a more equitable world for women. So yes, poverty is the main factor, as she said, because everything drives from there. Malnutrition comes from poverty, not having enough opportunities, choosing between boys and girls to send to school is a result of poverty. So everything stems from poverty. So that's the main barrier to girl education, which needs to be addressed in a big way. The second biggest barrier is, of course, menstruation, gender-based violence, and early marriage, as Manjula ji has just said. I would like to add a couple of points. Distance to schools. As she said, gender-based violence is a result because girls usually have to travel long distances to get to schools, and perhaps even early marriage. The family really wants to protect the girl child and marry her off early so that she's safe, which is very, very ironical, because early marriage leads to early pregnancy, malnutrition, and all the problems related to it. It defeats the purpose. But the family wants the girl to save the girl from gender-based violence, so they marry her off early. So early marriage is a problem. I would also like to bring your attention to conflict areas. Like Syria and other parts of the world, which are ridden with conflict and war, their girls out of school are 2.5 times girls out of school in other parts of the world, because the conditions are more difficult. So a special focus has to be on conflict and crisis ridden areas, because girls suffer a lot more in those areas which are facing adversity. Trafficking, of course, is a big concern. That is also a reason for girls being out of school. Yes, distance to school is a big issue. That infrastructure needs to be improved. Schools need to be brought closer to girls so that they have a safe environment to go to. And of course, lack of proper toilets, separate safe spaces for girls. So a lot is being done right now, fortunately, but still a long way to go before girls can go to toilets and have a safe environment, and all schools have all these facilities built into it. So we need to look into all these areas, and as we go forward, I'll just talk to you about like how we are focusing on some of these problems.
Yeah, there was some very, pertinent points brought out by the two of you, the distance to school, poverty, and what is coming across, I think, is very clear. Poverty and gender norms, especially gender norms is, which includes then lack of toilets, like, menstruation, the pubertal changes, as well as the distance. So, let's just explore more of that. But ironically, one reason both of you mentioned is poverty. But again, lack of access to education, makes the girl stay in poverty. And again, it has economic repercussions for the country. For example, a study conducted by Plan International showed that if a country ensures that all girls complete secondary education, that would boost the gross domestic product of the developing countries by 10% on an average. And every $1 or 80 rupees spent on girls' rights and education would generate almost a threefold return of 240 rupees or $3. So this is equivalent of billions of dollars in GDP. So obviously it's a vicious cycle. Once in poverty, if you are not able to complete your education, it is not only for the individual level but also for the hampers the economic development in the country. So, that is one of the issues that probably we need to look at, because once educating a girl does not, like we said in the beginning, it does not also improve at the individual level, but is also beneficial for the family, society, and the country in the larger run. So according to you, there are many international commitments, national commitments, all of which are focusing on ensuring that girls stay in school, girls complete their schooling. So let's first begin with the international commitments, like, the UN's, there's a word we keep on hearing, SDGs. What are these? What are some of the commitments in SDGs? So can you throw some light on that for, Ritu?
Okay, that's a very good question. Thank you for that question, Anushri. Yes, SDGs, I think, it's a very good framework to understand the problem of gender equality. And when we speak about gender equality and girl child not having access to education, we should look at the reasons for it. School में आएंगे तो उनको कैसे पढ़ाएंगे is, of course, once you bring them to school. But what are the barriers that stop them from coming to school? So in order to understand and to solve these problems, it is important to understand the SDGs. So जैसे हमने अभी बात करी कि no poverty is like, or poverty is the biggest barrier and no poverty is the solution to bring girls to school because it stops them from coming to school. We talked about lack of sanitation. That's a big barrier for them from coming to school. So it's important to solve that problem to bring them to school. So, of course, child marriage is another problem. Their health and malnutrition is another problem. So we have to get to the root of this problem. What is stopping girls from coming to schools? So I would like to tell you about our work. So what we do is that we educate children in schools about SDGs. And when we educate them, we teach them about every goal in a very child-friendly manner, in a very relatable manner, in a language they can understand. Now, the purpose of doing that is to have a more equitable society, because these are the children who will go out in the world tomorrow, who will be the future leaders, who will be the decision makers of tomorrow. And we want to make good human beings. And the way to achieve it is to tell them about the problems the world is facing. So to have a more equitable world, it's important for every child to understand about the cycle of poverty, as you're saying. कि उस cycle को break कैसे कर सकते हैं? What is the cycle of poverty? गरीब घर में बच्चा पैदा होता है, education नहीं मिलती, काम नहीं मिलता, आगे बच्चे पैदा हो जाते हैं, उनको भी same situation, same circle के through जाते हैं. So how do they break out of the cycle of poverty? So it's important to give them that education when they're still in school, when they can take some actions to tackle that problem. How to solve the problem of zero hunger? A child growing up in a poor household is facing that on everyday basis. So they need to be made aware about this problem. Of course, health and hygiene and sanitation and clean water. Girls, perhaps not many know, if we educate our girls, they will have, they can tackle climate change in a better way. How? Because they are the procurers of water. This is one of the most important household chores girls do. That's why they're made to stay back at home and not sent to school. they get cooking fuel. So they are the ones who are interacting with nature every day. So if we make them responsible consumers, or if they are in decision-making positions, they can tackle climate change also. So many of the problems are linked to gender equality and equity. So we cannot just address one problem. जैसे exercise करते हैं ना, तो they say कि spot training करने से results नहीं आते हैं. If you want to reduce your stomach, you can't just do spot training. You have to do cardio, you have to do strength training, you have to do an overall workout. So just addressing gender equality will not solve the issue. We have to address poverty, we have to address hunger, we have to address quality education, we have to address clean water and sanitation, we have to address decent work and economic growth, we have to reduce inequalities. So in order to do that, it's important to learn about the SDGs, and that's the work we are doing. We're sensitizing children, we are opening their minds to be the solution makers about these problems so that it can be a more equitable world. They are, of course, they understand the problems and the background the girls have. And of course, they can give a better world when they grow up to other human beings.
Thank you, Ritu. So catch them young is the mantra, I think, of ARC. And, it is and generating awareness, generating a discussion right at the young age will help, in starting a discussion, debate, and probably then coming out with solutions right from the young age. Manjula ji, would you like to add to this on the international commitments and, educating about the SDGs, as Ritu has just said? But I think for all the people listening out there, if you could also tell us something about what are these SDGs and, what is the SDG on education talk about, like just briefly for some of our listeners here.
Sure. So SDGs have really been around since 90s, right?
Sorry, Manjula ji, just to interrupt you, also, what is the full form of SDG?
Sustainable Development Goals. Now, since 1990, the UNESCO has come up with development goals, which span almost 360 degrees growth for the planet, right? So they're looking at whether it is gender, whether it is life on earth, land, or underwater, whether it is equitable opportunities for all, whether it is climate change, whether it is education, whether it is gender equality, whether it is poverty, number one being poverty. So what UNESCO has done is it has 17 goals in all. And since 1990, they have been, the first slogan was education for all. 5 years later, it was inclusive education. Then it became lifelong education. Now, it has not only very lucidly given each goal, so SDG 1, SDG 2 through 17, it's very pictorially given in such a manner that it's easy to relate to. And what Ritu and others who are working in the field have done is they've broken down each of the goals further for the consumption of young minds, and also to make them responsible learners from the very beginning, right? My only point that I want to make through the SDG is this. Of course, SDG 4 is education itself. It talks about, how education can be the solution to most things. My point that I want to drive is, since 1990, when UNESCO was making all of these SDG goals, sustainable development goals, that encompasses everything on earth, land and earth, and water and sky and climate, their main important slogan was always education. Whether it was education for all, it was lifelong education, inclusive education. They haven't missed the fact that it is in education that the solutions lie. They haven't missed the fact that when we not only catch them young, when we make students responsible, the planet and the future will be a different place. So since 1990, even though it is so wide, the underlying message has always been education. And therefore, one needs to, and all of us working in the field of education need to really internalize how important the segment is, how important education as a sector is, and how far-reaching consequences we can bring to the planet from sustainability perspective, employability, everything. And what we are talking today is a healthier, better world, right? When girls are not only educated, girls are responsible, and there has to be economic freedom. Without economic freedom, there is very little voice without economic freedom. And even in Kerala, if you see the literacy rate, which is a matriarchal society, is only 70% for females. Right. And that is our #1 literate state in India, where it is focused on women. So I think we really do need to think through some of these things to see how best we as practitioners can hit the ground running.
Yes, no, very truly said, Manjula ji, and not only catch them young, but make them responsible. And how, also highlighting that education has been the crux of all the goals right from the beginning. And I think even at the national level, the government of India, like you talked about the SDGs, is also playing giving a lot of emphasis on education, ensuring that girls remain in school, ensuring that enrollment rates for females increase, ensuring that, there are lower number of dropouts. So number of policies and schemes, including the national education policy, all focus on the girl child, like the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao scheme and other number of schemes. So then maybe, we should also look at, discuss some more on the national commitments and some of the national programs at the state level, at the central level. What are some of the, initiatives that the government has taken to ensure that girls remain in school and complete their schooling? So if you and Ritu can also highlight some of those issues.
So you've already brought it out, right? The Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao was at the very nascent stage. See, because it all began with gender-based killing. I mean, if it was, they discovered it's a girl child from the very beginning, there would be attempts to abort. So it began with, because the male-female statistics dropped, right? There were many more males than there were females in society. And that would be really not only unhealthy, there wouldn't even be matches for marriages if the ratio was not maintained. So starting with gender-based killings, right, which is where the Beti Bachao started, stop illegal abortion of girl child. And of course the Padhao. And then there is a host of schemes, which I think all NGOs who are working in the field not only need to familiarize, but also tell the people, sometimes it is just lack of awareness. And if people knew, then possibly they would be able to take advantage of this scheme. So just to run down a list. So you have Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, you have Sukanya Samriddhi Yojana, you have Balika Samriddhi Yojana, you have Mukhyamantri Rajashri Yojana, you have Mukhyamantri Ladli Yojana, you have a CBSE scheme, you have National Scheme for Incentives for Girls for Secondary Education. You have Mukhyamantri Kanya Suraksha Yojana, you have Mazhi Kanya Bhagishri Yojana, you have Nanda Devi Kanya Yojana. This is just something that I'm running down, okay? Now, how many benefits you have, right? If a girl child is born, there are schemes to gift money to the mother. If a girl child is born, then as you go forward, there are savings accounts made for girl children, which the government will subsidize, and as you know, because of wire transfer, it hits the bank. There is absolutely no leakage any further in the system, right? The parents are allowed to operate the bank account till the child studies till 12th grade. Now, there is tax exemption and 2 per child. So that is one. Now, when the infant is young, there is rupees 500 or some numbers like this till the child attends school. After the child attends school, the mother is given money because we see that the dropout is in the secondary. After 6th grade, there is more money given, right? And all of it is in the range of 5,000, 6,000. It's not less money, right? And these are all very easy. They're online applications. And if you have a girl child certificate going to school, these are the only 2 things that you really need. CBSE offers free courses, online services, video, literature, help in examination, tutors. So many facilities is offered by CBSE. Then in the Mukhyamantri And see, there are some states like the hilly regions where there are much more issues, right? Just because of the landscape. So the Nanda Devi is for that area, for Uttarakhand. Similarly, that the Bhagyashree scheme is for Bihar, which was slightly behind as compared to the other states. Now, when you put all of this together, you'll see that the government is trying its best not only to facilitate, but to give incentives, because they know that the girl child is dropping out due to the lack of money in the family. But I think where the gap is the lack of understanding, the lack of people being able to access such incentives. And I think that's where we need to work. That's where we need to create certain awarenesses. I'll give you some examples from Gujarat, jahan pe hum hain. Every year there is a 3-day camp for admissions of girl children to schools. Our entire bureaucracy is not in Gandhinagar. They're in the districts admitting girl children. The state had taken 0% dropout of girl children as a goal one of the years. So the fact of the matter is that the government has not only recognized it, but is working towards it. It is important for us as players to kind of spread the word. Aapne NEP ki zikr ki. NEP is a policy. It's a very strong forward-looking document. But if it's resource people like us, if it is implementers like us that do not take the NEP forward, then the NEP is a piece of paper. The same goes for all of these yojanas. And that's where I'd like to say that more and more NGOs should spread the word, make it easy for people to be able to go online, apply and get the benefits. And then children will be in school because they don't have to stay home. And by staying home, humne baat kari thi, whether it is distance, whether, when they are doing household chores, they are exposing to gender-based violences. And it's really it's very, very vicious. वो cycle ही शुरू हो जाती है. So I think that's the solution. Policies are in place, implementation needs to be worked on.
Yes, and also that was a long list of policies, and obviously at the state level, we were recently in Imphal, and there we saw, the Imphal government has kept sanitary napkin, vending machines and incinerators in all schools, second level and elementary schools, to address one of the issues that you and Ritu had brought about on menstrual hygiene and girls dropping out at puberty. So some, states have a cycle scheme where girls can cycle to address the issue of distance that you had talked about. Ritu, do you also want to add something on, some of the government schemes that you may have come across in your work around SDGs that you feel is contributing to girls staying in school?
Yes, I would like to add something to what you and Manjula ji have just mentioned about government schemes. So it's very commendable. The work that the government is doing can't be better. The list of schemes you see and how widespread they are and working at different levels, it's really, really commendable, the work that's being done. The work that's being done by the development sector is also very commendable. But we still know that there's still something lacking here. So we need to see greater, I think, private sector involvement in it now. The development sector is doing its work, the government is doing its work. There has to be some public-private partnership model here, which we seem to be missing. So greater efforts on part of private organizations. I know there are CSR funds that are being allocated towards this cause now, but we need to see greater public-private partnership to make it more comprehensive, to make it more holistic, to cover all sections of the society, to bring every girl to school. So that is the effort that we need to see. And as Manjula ji was saying, there are so many schemes of the government on making the girl child financially independent, on making girls financially independent. The savings bank schemes and other accounts which have a higher interest rate are geared towards getting the girls to be more financially independent. But as I work in the education system, I think education is the first step to everything. It cannot happen till all girls achieve financial literacy. क्योंकि उनके फादर्स उनके अकाउंट संभालते रहेंगे, उनके हस्बैंड्स उनके अकाउंट संभालते रहेंगे, वो कभी फाइनेंशियली इंडिपेंडेंट हो ही नहीं पाएंगे. So I think the first step is to make them financially literate So we have to empower the girls so that they can handle whatever they're earning, whatever their income is. At least they should be in control of that. We are launching at ARC also, we are launching a financial literacy program for girls, because we know that true change can only begin when we empower the girls. Otherwise, these accounts will be there, but as Manjula ji said, implementation में सब गड़बड़ हो जाएगी. वो accounts कोई और ही handle करेगा, वो money कोई और ही control करेगा, and the real beneficiary will be somebody else, not the girl child.
So that's some very important points there, Ritu. So one of the things that I think I would like to delve more on this public-private partnership quickly, because we have less time and some of the questions are, so what are, according to you, are some of the areas, where the private sector can probably support in, investing in girls' education?
For me, it is like there is still a lot of scope for developing this sector, be it health and hygiene for girls, be it digitization of education and providing access to devices and the means to access the best education from around the world. So, of course, many private organizations who are working in the education sector, not working in the education sector, should have dedicated efforts, whatever their expertise are, lend it towards this cause, so that be it digitization of education and reaching every child with a device, be it providing better health and hygiene services, be it improving the infrastructure in schools. As we discussed, like toilets are perhaps the biggest deterrent for girls from coming to school. So be it like adding sanitation facilities, be it providing a safe mode of transport to schools. So a lot of new ideas. So not just in terms of like, not just financial help, but a lot of expertise and ideas need to come in from private sector, and in partnership with the public sector, it can really do wonders. We have seen NSDC, I used to work for them, National Skill Development, and they're doing very commendable work towards skill development in the nation now. So it's a public-private partnership model. So it's running successfully in that. So same kind of efforts we need to pump into girl education.
Thanks. And there's a lot of food for thought there, and probably a lot of content for the webinars to follow on how education should be. And it should include both financial literacy, digital literacy. So, but, we're running out of time. And there's, as I said, let's have, these are content for some of our series that we'll be, taking on. But Manjula ji, do you also want to quickly add to the public-private partnership?
Right. I will, if I were to nail it, if we were to say there's just one thing that we need to fix that would give the maximum impact. There's this Pareto principle, 80%. You focus on the 20% task that gives the 80% impact. I think it's the poor teacher quality. Why is it that rural schools also prefer private schools? It's not anything else but the quality of the teacher, right? Now, not only the poor teacher quality, also absenteeism. It's a huge, whether you say, because of lack of monitoring, whether there is other kind, the fact that it's electoral duty comes in once in 5 years, but that's become like the big thing, saying that, government puts the teachers on duty, so they're never in schools. So if we need to deal with this, and this is the central point, and I think the private industry can do a lot for that. One is to train the teacher in such a manner that the teacher becomes responsible, right? Because a lot of it is what happens inside the classroom. Now, if children are dropping out in senior school, it's because they don't see the value. If they saw value, they wouldn't go, or the parents saw value. So there has to be some kind of intervention, right? Something that shows them after you do 12th, what is your future? So some kind of career counseling, some kind of individual talk, hand holding, the urban children, how much, I hate to use the word tuitions, but despite having good teachers, there's a whole tuition culture because not everybody learns similarly. Now, in these schools, in far-flung schools, whether it's hilly regions or rural schools, there's no such intervention. And which, with digitization, with satellite-based learning, it's so easy to do. This is where the private industry can step in. One is play a good role in teacher development. Two is, in the case the teachers are not there, just get in there and teach. remote teaching, hybrid teaching, satellite-based teaching, do career counseling, do personal chats, do individual IEPs, individual education plans to take students from. So these are practices that we always do. And if there was a unified effort to do it, I think we would be able to crack that issue about lack of motivation of children being in the classroom because of lack of teachers absenteeism. And teacher plays a very big role. So it's not just the vouchers that are going to make children come to school. It's not just the midday meal. Of course, the midday meal is a big incentive. And after that, what? So the teacher is anyways at the center of the whole universe of education. And if we are somehow able to add a lot of value there and build a muscle there, I think we'll go a long way.
There's some very, very practical solutions there. And with that, we are almost coming to our time and we have some questions too. But I guess, we did discuss a lot in these past 35 minutes, where we said, yes, we discussed about the barriers like poverty, the gender norms, but gender norms also looking at infrastructure, but we also then looked at the commitments, the government commitments, the international commitments. We discussed that while there are a number of policies and schemes, the implementation is weak and we need to strengthen the implementation. We talked about, some of the practical solutions, public-private partnerships, looking at also, addressing the root cause, which is not only getting the girls to school, but also improving the quality of teaching and learning that takes place and ensuring that teachers are there, because then just getting the girls to school is half the battle won. So I think in conclusion, what we have discussed that though, yes, completion of secondary education is important. It is very important for the girl to break out of that vicious cycle of poverty. And what we have also, kind of explored today is that it is a fixable issue. It is not something which is really a daunting or non-fixable. It is, it is a fixable issue. And if we can fix it, we can also, build on, if we can reduce this gender gap, improve the access and quality of education to girls, we can prevent losses in, of crores of rupees, which is what happens when women are not educated and women cannot participate meaningfully in workplace, formal jobs. And it leads to lost earnings. So I guess this is what we have discussed today. And thank you both of you for sharing this and, sharing your ideas. We have some questions here and one of you can decide to take it on. How digital divide has further added to the list of already existing barriers is one of our questions.
There is, whatever I have seen about the CSR funds being utilized, the companies are very comfortable in buying gadgets. You see, because it's a tangible. When they buy a gadget, it's a tangible and they can actually book it. And they can show that the money has been used for an asset being created. So the availability of a computer is not a problem. It is after that. It is the hardware is not the problem. It is what is happening to the software, who is doing the teaching. So it again boils down to the teacher. Right now, if we can't do science, language, math, computer to fir additional skill aa gaya na. So where we are not able to deal with the teacher requirement for the fundamental teaching areas, there, yes, I agree that it will add to another issue of that school. That abhi ek laptop aa gaya jisko puja hota hai but kuch hota nahi hai usme because koi hai nahi padhane wale. So the focus has to be on the human resource. The focus has to be on, now that we've given you the computer lab, we also take the responsibility to teach for next 1 or 3 years, 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. I think we need to get into that level of implementation. Only then it will be done.
So it's not only about the computers, but also ensuring that we have teachers to teach how to operate those devices, but also about, do you agree with the fact that there is a digital gender divide between, and can that also be a barrier in teaching, the digital divide in education?
I am not sure if I can right away agree with that. India has the deepest penetration of phones in the world, possibly Africa comes, and both of these are developing countries. If it was about digital understanding, and it's not, because children are very native to learning, to digitization, digital learning, that's not an issue. But this is an example that I want to share with you through the COVID days. We run an NGO called Visamo Kids, where we have children from far-flung Gujarat, BPL children, who come stay with us. Now, we kind of foster them for 14 years, and then we've made them productive members of society. Aajkal hamare bache engineers hain, designers hain, they run entrepreneurs hain, dentists hain. Having said that, during the COVID period, when they could not stay with us, we sent them home. Now, we were doing digital learning. All we needed is a phone device. So their parents, everybody has phones, but may not be a smartphone. So hame Zoom karne ke liye smartphone ki zarurat thi. So we put out a request saying, if anybody has second-hand smartphones, please give it to us. And we were able to send our phones even. Right? Then came a question about, bandwidth or, whatever, but SIMs everyone has. The real challenge came here. Children were not able to access the digital learning because unko bandwidth pakadne ke liye 3 kilometer and ek hillock pe khada hona chahiye tha. Tabhi wo bandwidth pakadte the. So it is not the device. Device children will know better than us, right? They're native learners. It is really how we are going to transmit. So there is satellite-based education, whether it's reached I'm talking, this is a Gujarat example that I gave you, but there will be similar examples. So it is really in the implementation, it is really in the last mile intervention. Otherwise, the solutions are there. It is in the last mile intervention that we will see success.
Right. And if a household has just one phone or two phones, and it is a cultural thing also, and they have both a girl child and a boy child at home, and only one can do a class, and obviously the phone will go to the boy child. So that actually accentuates the divide, as you were saying, because if they have a choice, it again boils down to poverty and limited resources. And if they have to make a choice, the boy child gets the preference because they think he will go out, he's the main bread earner, he needs to learn more than the girl needs to learn. So that obviously accentuates the divide if there is a limitation of resources there. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that I think, and it leads to what you had said earlier, that, it's not only education, we have to focus more on bringing financial inclusion, digital inclusion, and, to ensure that girls remain in the system and increase their employability. There's another question.
Anushree, if I may just add one other point. See, we also run privileged schools, right, in Caltex, like a Delhi public school. One of the things that we've seen is till 10th grade children, girls are doing exceedingly well, right? And then post that, we've noticed that boys, maybe it is the, survival instinct kicks in, whatever. But what you will see is a lot of girls after 10th are not given the same opportunity to, say, travel down south if they want to become an engineer. It's not just rural India.
It is in every strata of society. I've heard middle income people say that अगर मुझे student loan लेना है तो मैं लड़के के लिए लूंगा ना, मेरे घर में रहेगा. लड़की के लिए लूंगा तो किसी और के लिए मैं कर रहा हूं, because लड़की की तो शादी करके जानी है. It is not only rural India.
It's everywhere. Yes.
It is our fabric. It is our fabric. It's the Indian fabric. So I don't think we can relegate it to rural India. So it's happening in every pocket. In every pocket it happens.
Yes,
It's a much deeper cultural thing.
yeah, particularly they say that investing in your girl's education is like watering somebody else's garden.
So which brings me back to the whole point. Yes, poverty and other issues are important, but
Cultural also.
gender discussions and addressing gender and social norms is a cross-cutting area, and it has to be, continuous dialogue along with other things that we are looking at. So there's another question. What are your views on no retention policy under the Right to Education Act? This is one of the problems in urban slums, where students generally face problem of age-appropriate learning, and till the time they reach class 9, they cannot even clear the exam, and therefore they drop out. This is, I think, from one of our field workers, because of the no retention policy. By the time, though the child is technically in class 9, but unable to answer, many children are unable to answer the questions, and therefore also they drop out.
Right. So let me give you, of course, RT clearly specifies that it has to be age-based, which also means that if a child is age 7, he should be in grade 2, whether he studied anything before that or not. It also plain reading means that. The no retention policy means you can't fail a child till 8th grade.
Mhm.
Although there are some circulars diluting that and saying that at least make it till 5th grade. Along with that came the 10th grade, no examination, no external exam. Now, all that put together created in that, and during the COVID, there is this batch of 2-3 years where our concepts have really gone for a major toss.
Mhm.
And which is where CBSE had to put back the grade 10 external examination, because they saw that the academic rigor was really going away. It's a different discussion altogether, that whether academic rigor, given the age of Google, is it only about information? Education is no longer about information. It is about application of that information, right? Having said that,
What happened there?
with the assessment system, it's that 1 hour of March 5th when I was sick that I had to take my physics exam that will determine how good I am at physics. Not fair. So I think our assessment standards have to change, right? And it should be more, any form. It can be open questioning, it could be project based, it could be, there are many ways to assess. So I think that we need to go down that road. But yes, I have heard teachers say that the no failing or the retention policy has led to students not performing as well as they used to perform. I've heard that for sure.
Right.
A very useful solution from you there. Yeah, Ritu, sorry.
I was going to say the stress for examination definitely needs to go away, but the checks and balances have to be there. There has to be assessment for learning, not assessment of learning. I am very fond of formative assessment, because that tells you where the child has reached, what you need to do to take the child to the appropriate level, but you're not judging the child or failing the child, but there are checks and balances to make sure that learning outcomes are met. That's the most important thing.
And learning and the assessment can also be in a playway method, like Manjula ji just mentioned. I like the line on assessment for learning. So there is another question. Not having Aadhaar card and other documents is also another barrier of girls. I think it's more of a statement where, not having Aadhaar card and other documents is also a barrier of girl child education, is what one of our participants out there has highlighted.
I think she's bang on, because it's very easy to do an Aadhaar card, and I think we should create the awareness, because it is when you have the Aadhaar card, you'll get admission. It is when you have the Aadhaar card, you'll get RT quota. It is when you have the Aadhaar card, you'll get the stipend. It is when you have the Aadhaar card, the Yojana schemes will become available to you. It is when you have the Aadhaar card, you'll have a bank account in your name. So it's so central and it's so simple that somebody should just sit with a computer and help them do it. It's like a 5-minute task. So point taken, but I think that Aadhaar card should be done for everybody.
And it's something that, yes, we recognize, and we need to facilitate the communities wherever needed to get it done. I think the last question for the, day to day is something we discussed on public-private partnerships, where we talked about, corporates, CSR pitching in. So what are your thoughts on adopting government schools by corporates and multinationals for development of infrastructures like toilets and teacher skills, which we said that, yes, it is an area where they should be invested. But I think the question more is on, if that happens, do you have any views on the sustainability plan?
It's already happening. I'll give you the Gujarat example, and I'm sure it's happening everywhere else. The Eklavya schools are tribal schools, which are a PPP model with the private school owners and the government. There is a new school called Setu, which they're trying to do for the senior schools for dropouts of schools, where dropout of government school children, where Gyan Setu it's called. It's essentially a bridge to take them to secondary education, which is again a PPP model, which is essentially aapki infrastructure hogi, bacche government denge, and bacche unka fees bhi government denge. There is if you may have also heard about the Gurukul system that the government is starting, has it already circulated to some extent. That is also PPP. I think that at least in Gujarat, PPP has been proven as a solution. बहुत सारे private players हैं जो government के साथ काम करते हैं. Regarding sustainability, the only question I guess that is indirectly being asked is, does government pay the fees when it says it's going to pay the fees? So I don't think that we've had many issues of cash flow, but the more valid question is, sometimes if you're building a residential school, for instance, the upfront capital expenditure can be very big, because there's land, there's 20,000, 30,000 area to be constructed, wo sab hai. So there is a cost involved in the upfront, but cash flow mein badi issues nahi dikhti. And if you can tie up with the government and you get students and you get the tuition fee, I think it's a very, very workable model.
Yes, thank you. Ritu, do you want to add to that?
I would, in fact, say that is the only model that can be sustainable. Like, government can't do it alone, or the development sector can't do it. It has to be a PPP model. Yes, as Manjula is saying, that we have to smoothen out the difficult areas like cash flow, and all need to be addressed. So once all of that, and she's saying it's running successfully in so many states. So that's the only sustainable solution. I can't think of any other model that will reach out to such huge numbers.
So thank you for pointing out to the Gujarat example, and to the participant who has asked that question. Maybe we can also look at the Gujarat model and how they've got in sustainability to, learn from how you get in sustainability in the CSR interventions. So I also, with that, we come to an end. I don't think there are any more questions. Thank you so much, Ritu and Manjula ji, for being with us today. And it was great talking to you and exploring some of the barriers, and also identifying some of the solutions to the barriers along, with both of you. And I now hand it out to Shafali to say the vote of thanks.
Yeah, so it was an amazing session. I was completely making notes as to what we can do and implement. But yeah, investing in girls' education transform not just communities, but the whole country and the world itself. And with the solutions that you both have provided, I'm sure a lot of stakeholders will now have resources as to how they can unlock these barriers on their own level as well as their community's level. I thank you both for attending this session and giving us your time and support and your generous knowledge. We truly appreciate it, and I really think that this session is going to help a lot of girls in our fields as well as the other areas, who can now have the resources, as we talk about the government resources, the public-private partnership, and can work it out in their favor. So I, from Plan India team, along with Anushri, thank you both for attending this session, and it was truly amazing having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again, and it was really a very enriching and an enlightening session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.